25-cent breakout line, a move that could signal the end of the recent volatility and the start of a new directional advance.
Now, I know we've heard XRP is about to explode 1,000 times, but this time, something's different. Because in exactly 4 days, the setup, the kind we only see once every few years, might finally snap. Let's slow down for a second. Think about where we are right now. Bitcoin's dominance is hovering near its peak. Altcoins are barely moving, and everyone's asleep on XRP. But that's usually when it happens, right before the moment everyone wishes they had paid attention. It's that silence before the thunder. The kind of quiet that makes you check your portfolio twice before bed. Here's the wild part. XRP hasn't done anything flashy lately. No moonshots. No crazy pump and dumps. But behind the scenes, on-chain data is showing accumulation at a level we haven't seen since before the 2021 run. Whales, the ones who don't post memes or drop when Moon comments, have been quietly loading up. Addresses holding over 10 million XRP have increased for 6 straight weeks. You don't need to be a chart wizard to understand what that means. When the people who move markets start building positions while everyone else is distracted, it's never random. It's strategic. And that's where the 4 days part gets interesting. Multiple analysts, the kind who usually keep quiet, are pointing out a convergence on XRP's chart. RSI oversold, Bollinger Squeeze tightening, and liquidity clusters sitting just above the current price zone. In plain English, XRP looks like it's been coiling, getting ready for something it hasn't done in months. Move hard, fast, and without warning. Let's be real, being an XRP holder isn't for the weak. We've been called delusional, hopeless, and everything in between. We've watched the SEC case drag on for years. We've seen fake pumps, fake news, and every XRP is dead headline you can imagine. And yet, we're still here. Because deep down, XRP isn't just another altcoin. It's a mission. It's a challenge to the system that's been rigged since the first fiat note was printed. That's why this next move feels personal for so many holders. It's not about getting rich overnight. It's about being vindicated, about seeing the world finally realize what we've known all along. Now, here's where things get really interesting. Over the past week, there's been a quiet buzz in private crypto groups. Whispers about a liquidity adjustment that could occur within the next 4 days. Nobody's saying it outright, but the breadcrumbs are there. Ripple's transaction volume through ODL, on-demand liquidity corridors, has been spiking. Several regional payment gateways tied to RippleNet just went dark for maintenance. Coincidence? Maybe. But anyone who's been around this market long enough knows nothing this big happens by accident. The same kind of scheduled maintenance appeared just before major price shifts back in 2020 and 2021. So when you combine that kind of back-end activity with whale accumulation, tightening price structure, and the sudden silence from the usual market manipulators, it's hard not to feel that something's about to snap. There's another layer here that's too big to ignore. The world's financial system is shifting fast. Central banks are testing digital settlement systems. SWIFT is integrating ISO 20022 across global payment rails, and Ripple quietly is connected to most of those networks. So, while the average investor is waiting for another memecoin to moon, Ripple's technology is being embedded into the plumbing of global finance. That's why the timing feels intentional. For days from now, we could see the domino effect begin, not necessarily because of a single announcement, but because the infrastructure itself is reaching a breaking point. When money starts moving differently, assets like XRP, the ones built for real-world liquidity, don't just rise, they reprice. The emotional setup. What happens when people wake up? Picture this. For days past, XRP suddenly breaks resistance. 10%, 20%, 40% up. Crypto Twitter explodes. You start seeing clips of influencers who swore XRP was a dead coin, now saying, "I always knew XRP was special." We've seen this movie before. But what's different this time is the foundation. This isn't driven by meme hype or fake volume. It's driven by structural change, by the fact that global payment systems are literally being reprogrammed for speed, liquidity, and transparency. XRP just happens to be the bridge asset designed for exactly that purpose. Right now, XRP feels like a storm waiting for permission to break. In 4 days, maybe nothing happens, Or maybe the entire market wakes up to the reality that XRP isn't lagging. It's loading. And when that load finally releases, it's not going to be gentle. Because when XRP moves, it doesn't crawl, it launches. That's why smart holders aren't trying to time it to the hour. They're preparing, staying calm, and understanding that when the tide turns, it'll happen too fast to catch. So, if you've been wondering whether to give up, whether the wait is worth it, this might be the final stretch before XRP reminds everyone that patience in crypto isn't weakness. It's power. What's actually happening behind this 4-day countdown? Because every time the XRP community feels that buzz, something deeper is going on. This isn't just about charts or speculation. It's about timing, the kind of timing that's been months, maybe years in the making. If you've noticed, Ripple has gone unusually quiet over the past few weeks. No major press releases. No flashy partnerships. Just silence. But that silence isn't random. It's strategic. Whenever Ripple goes dark, it usually means something is happening behind the curtains. Something involving banks, corridors, or liquidity pilots that they can't talk about yet. A few insiders have been hinting that several RippleNet corridors across Asia, the Middle East, and Africa have been rebalancing liquidity. That's a fancy way of saying they're preparing to push more money through faster. And guess which asset sits at the heart of those corridors? Backhand index pointing right, XRP. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Ripple's ODL, on-demand liquidity, uses XRP as a bridge asset between currencies. But ODL doesn't need hype to function, it needs liquidity. And liquidity, my friend, doesn't just appear overnight. It's built strategically, quietly, and intentionally. So, when Ripple corridors suddenly go offline for scheduled maintenance, while whale wallets start accumulating and exchanges reduce XRP supply, that's not coincidence. That's coordination. Let's zoom out to the charts for a moment, not with trader jargon, but real talk. XRP has been trapped in this tight range for months, right? It's been boring, frustrating, and completely ignored by mainstream media. But that's exactly what a reaccumulation phase looks like. It's like a slingshot being pulled back. The longer it stays coiled, the more violent the release. Right now, XRP's trading volume is at multi-month lows, but the order book depth is rising. That means buyers are loading up under the surface, even while price looks flat. Market makers are absorbing every dip. Every red candle you see is being bought. This is how whales and institutions set traps for impatient retail investors. They shake out weak hands, trigger stop losses, and quietly build their base before the next leg up. And when they're ready, when the liquidity pool is deep enough, all it takes is one spark. That's where this 4-day window comes in. Several analysts are watching this exact period because XRP's chart has aligned multiple technical signals: RSI reset, bullish divergence, volume compression, and a historical breakout pattern identical to the 2017 and 2020 pre-pump formations. History doesn't repeat exactly, but it often rhymes. Now let's get to the whispers, the stuff that doesn't hit headlines yet. Over the past week, there's been movement among Ripple's known partners. Tranglo, SBI Holdings, and a few unnamed banks in the UAE and Singapore have started testing instant settlement flows using Ripple technology. And while none of these documents explicitly mention XRP, because they never do until after the fact, the test logs show timestamp transactions that match on-chain XRP movements within minutes. In plain terms, Ripple is running something. And here's the part that connects the dots. This testing window is scheduled to conclude in 4 days. That's why analysts are buzzing. That's why sentiment is shifting. Nobody's saying XRP will moon the exact day, but if you've been in crypto long enough, you know how this goes. First comes the testing window, then the liquidity switch, then the price follows the utility. And that's what makes this moment different. We're not waiting for random speculation anymore. We're watching utility line up with timing. Zoom out even more. The global financial system is creaking under pressure. Inflation, war funding, and de-dollarization trends have created one big problem: liquidity fragmentation. Banks are sitting on trapped capital because cross-border payments are slow, costly, and outdated. Ripple's entire model, using XRP as a bridge to free up that liquidity, directly solves that problem. And guess what's happening right now? Dozens of countries are launching pilot CBDC programs that connect to systems already compliant with ISO 20022, the same standard XRP is built for. So, when we talk about this 4-day countdown, it's not just about traders waiting for a pump. It's about the infrastructure aligning at the exact moment the market is desperate for a faster system. It's like the universe is syncing, the tech, the timing, and the tension are all converging. In crypto, there's always a moment where everything shifts, and it usually happens when most people aren't looking. The switch moment is when the utility suddenly catches up to the speculation. When that happens, charts stop matching because the narrative changes. For XRP, that switch could be triggered by a sudden spike in ODL corridor transactions, an unexpected RippleNet expansion announcement, a massive institutional inflow through OTC over-the-counter channels. And once it starts, it won't pause to wait for confirmation tweets or analyst takes. It'll move before the news drops, as it always does. That's why so many holders are locking in their positions now. They know this isn't about predicting the exact candle. It's about recognizing that the pieces are finally in place. Every XRP rally in the past had something missing, either legal clarity, institutional adoption, or network maturity. Now, all three are aligning. The SEC case is largely behind us. Ripple's partnerships with payment networks and banks are expanding. The infrastructure is mature. So, this 4 days might not be a random number. It might be the point where all those under-the-surface developments finally meet market attention. And when speculation and fundamentals collide, that's when the breakout becomes undeniable. The question isn't whether XRP will move, it's when and how violently. Because if history is any guide, the real pump doesn't start with hype, it starts with disbelief. People ignore it, call it a fake out, and by the time they realize it's real, it's already doubled. That's what these next 4 days are setting up for. Not a guaranteed moonshot, but a turning point. So stay calm, stay informed, and watch closely. Because when the charts, liquidity, and real-world tests all start syncing, XRP doesn't just react. It rewrites the script. Every bull run has its star, the one asset that shifts from being a joke to the centerpiece of global attention. Bitcoin had its time. Ethereum had its moment. But this time, the setup feels tailor-made for XRP. Because what's coming isn't just another crypto cycle. It's a reset, a financial restructuring of how money moves, who controls it, and what sits in the middle of it all. And guess what? XRP was literally designed for that. The days of random meme coins flying 100x are fading. The market's evolving, moving toward assets that actually do something. And this is where XRP stands out. While most coins are still trying to find their purpose, Ripple has already built real-world pipelines. ODL, on-demand liquidity, is already live in over 70 countries. RippleNet is processing millions in cross-border settlements daily. And multiple banks, yes, traditional banks, are quietly using XRP behind the scenes to free up capital stuck in slow legacy rails. It's wild when you think about it. The same asset mainstream media dismissed as dead is now the backbone of pilot programs tied to CBDCs and instant settlement systems. That's why the term reset keeps popping up. Because the infrastructure is evolving faster than anyone expected. If you've been following this channel, you know we've talked a lot about ISO 20022, the global messaging standard that's becoming the new backbone of international finance. This isn't some conspiracy theory or hype term. It's real, it's happening, and it's already being adopted by SWIFT, the IMF, and major central banks. Now, here's where it connects directly to XRP. Ripple and XRP are ISO 20022 compliant. That means as the world transitions into this new standardized system, where financial messages, payments, and settlements all sync in real time, XRP is already compatible. You can't overstate how massive that is. It's like everyone's trying to build a bridge to the future, but Ripple built it 10 years ago and just kept improving it quietly. Now, let's talk CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. Over 130 countries are experimenting or actively developing them. But here's the twist. They don't exist in isolation. They need bridges to connect them, to move value across borders, across systems, across banks. That's where XRP shines. Ripple has already confirmed collaborations with central banks and payment providers to test cross-border CBDC interoperability. Translation: XRP becomes the neutral layer that allows digital currencies from different nations to talk to each other. Think of it as the translator of the new financial world. And if you control the bridge, you control the flow of money. That's why analysts and insiders are calling this upcoming cycle the utility era. Because the world doesn't need a new meme coin. It needs a system that moves money as fast as the internet moves information. Ripple built exactly that. For years, XRP has been suppressed, legally, socially, and algorithmically. The SEC lawsuit dragged on, headlines were brutal, and exchanges delisted it. But ironically, that phase might have been the perfect setup. Because while the spotlight was off, Ripple kept building. They were signing deals, expanding corridors, refining liquidity solutions, all under the radar. Now, as the legal dust settles and exchanges relist XRP worldwide, the stage is clear. We're not talking about what if anymore. We're talking about when. And that's the energy you're feeling in the market right now. The calm before recognition. The moment when the world starts connecting dots that XRP holders have seen for years. Let's zoom out for a second. The world is fragmenting geopolitically, economically, and digitally. Countries are building their own systems, their own currencies, and their own payment rails. But that creates friction, and friction slows money. XRP's purpose is to remove that friction. To make any currency, from any country, flow seamlessly across the globe instantly. That's not just a feature. That's a global necessity. So when we talk about XRP going crazy, it's not about chasing a pump. It's about watching a long-term narrative finally meet its moment. When real-world use, legal clarity, and institutional liquidity all converge, it's no longer speculation. It's transformation. Now, you might be asking, okay, but why 4 days? That's where everything lines up. The on-chain metrics, the partner testing, the liquidity corridors, they all point towards something activating soon. This isn't random hype. This is pattern recognition. If this truly is the beginning of the global liquidity shift Ripple has been building toward, then the next few days might not just mark a price move, they might mark a paradigm shift. Because when the world finally realizes that XRP isn't competing against the system, it's powering it, that's when everything changes. XRP's story has always been bigger than price. It's about building the foundation for the digital economy that's already unfolding. So, whether it's in 4 days or 4 weeks, the moment's coming when the world won't call XRP risky anymore. They'll call it essential. And when that happens, the breakout won't just be financial. It'll be historical. In 4 days, the crypto space might look very different. Maybe it starts with a quiet candle on the chart that barely anyone notices. Maybe it begins with a single liquidity corridor going live in Asia. Or maybe, just maybe, it's a global shift we'll all remember as the moment XRP stopped being a theory and became the system. 4 years, the conversation around XRP has been one big if. If the lawsuit ends, if banks adopt it, if regulators ever catch up. But look around, those ifs are slowly turning into done deals. The lawsuit, largely resolved. Adoption, expanding across continents. Regulation, finally catching up to the tech. So now we're standing at the edge of something that doesn't feel like speculation anymore. It feels like the payoff of patience. And that's why this next 4-day window feels so intense. Because whether or not the exact spark happens this week, the setup is undeniable. XRP isn't waiting for permission anymore. The infrastructure is ready. The system is ready. The world is almost ready. Let's talk emotions for a second. If you've held XRP this long, through the dips, the hate, the endless waiting, then you already know what resilience feels like. You didn't just hold a coin. You held a belief. You believed in a technology that most of the world laughed at. You believed in a company that kept building while everyone else was distracted. And you believed that one day, the system would need what Ripple created. Now that moment is close. So don't let FOMO or fear shake you now. The next few days could bring volatility, noise, confusion. But remember, that's what happens right before the breakthrough. The noise is always loudest before clarity hits. The truth? Maybe nothing dramatic happens exactly 4 days from now. But this countdown has become more than a number. It's a marker. It's a symbol of how close we are to the next chapter of financial history. Because whether it's this week, next month, or early 2026, the narrative has shifted. The institutions are positioning. The corridors are opening. The world is realizing that the bridge asset isn't just an idea, it's a necessity. And XRP is that bridge. So instead of waiting for a miracle, prepare for momentum. Stay informed, stay patient, and understand that this next era won't be about who got lucky. It'll be about who was ready. Here's the warning I want to leave you with, and this part matters. When XRP finally takes off, it won't rise slowly. It'll happen fast. You won't have time to react. And by the time the media starts covering it, it'll already be too late to buy cheap. That's how every paradigm shift works. It rewards the silent believers and humbles the loud doubters. So while the world is still sleeping, use these days wisely. Research, reflect, prepare. Because when the lights turn on and liquidity floods in, you'll want to be in position, not in panic. This is your final reminder that patience pays, but only for those who stay ready when the signal flashes. You've waited long enough. You've endured enough. And now, whether this countdown marks the beginning of the breakout or just the first tremor of something bigger, know this: XRP's story isn't ending. It's just beginning. Because when the global reset happens, the bridges will matter more than the coins, and XRP is the bridge the world's about to cross. So get ready. The next few days could be the moment the narrative flips forever. If this video spoke to you, if you feel that same tension building, do this right now. Drop a comment below and tell me how long you've been holding XRP. I want to see how many OGs are still standing strong. And if you're new to this community, welcome. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and buckle up. Because the next few days could make crypto history, and you don't want to watch it from the sidelines. This isn't financial advice. It's situational awareness. We're not here for hype. We're here for transformation. So stay calm, stay focused, and remember, patience isn't passive. It's power. Because when XRP moves, it moves the world.